And, we're going to have a lot of skeptics on here. You know that, because there are a lot of leaders that they're on the other camp, right? It's all about operational cadence and excellence. It's all about the numbers. Where's the deal? Let's run the process. Let's make sure we're maniacally focused on that process. And they, in some ways, will lose sight of the fact that business is a human game. It's an infinite human game. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's what catapults and gets everything going for a transformation, because transformation is not easy. So you need to have that culture of safety. You need to have that culture of, we're all in this together, the mission statement of togetherness, right? And I think that's what you're talking about. And I think that is so cool to say that. And I know from my perspective, all the neuroscience backs this up. Gallup did a study, by the way, and employees that are engaged in their culture, fully engaged, and they have leadership that actually demonstrate and live and breathe the servant leadership principles, these companies are 22% more profitable. Who would not want that, right? So these are real numbers that the neuroscience is backing up. So for all those leaders that are listening and they're like, what are these guys talking about? They're crazy. This works. And you and I have lived this, right? I lived it when I was over in London doing that, and you lived it in your career. So I think it's really important for people to get that and write that down, that this is to be transformational, to be successful during a transformation. That it's about the people. It's about the culture. It's about leading within and being a servant leader. And I think that's really, really important. And I think you're hammering it home. And I hope people listening and writing this down. So thank you for doing that. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you nailed it. I just want to highlight that operational cadence, numbers, execution are absolutely critical. Like you don't build a culture and servant leadership at the expense of that. You hold people accountable, and people need to deliver, and you need to set expectations and be clear and help them deliver. But it's we have to go execute, and that's right there at the top as well. I think sometimes people think, it's about the culture and kumbaya and all that. No, the culture is absolutely critical, and that trust and empathy. But at the end of the day, we execute or we don't. Got to execute.
We wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. And we wouldn't be sitting here unless we did. So that this is all about operational cadence and excellence is sort of what we lived and breathed. I did that for 4 decades, and so for me now looking back and where I was successful and where I wasn't, is that was the table stakes. You had the people that you knew could do that job. They wouldn't be here unless they could. You had to trust them that was going to happen. Of course, that was something that guided your principles as a chief sales officer or a VP of sales or a sales leader. You had that operational cadence and excellence. Absolutely, no doubt about it. And I think that what we're saying together is that's table stakes. We know that's going to happen, or else you don't have the job anyways. I know a guy that used to say, that's your day job, right? And that's, right, Christian, right? That's your day job. And you've got to do that. But as a leader, building that culture through transformation, you've got to have that servant leadership principle. I think that both combined, wow, you cannot beat it. You cannot beat it. And you've had plenty of opportunities where you've seen that come through, and so have I. So, well put. I hope everybody heard that as well. So, and I know, we talked about sort of transformation and examples, and I lived that example at Splunk with you, Audubon, and the coming up the ranks. I was one of the first. In fact, I was one of the first people that did some of those big deals at Splunk with Splunk Cloud and got messy. Yeah, right. It was very messy. And
we're doing those, but thank you.
Yeah, well, it was fantastic, and I enjoyed it because it was messy, and I knew that we were onto something, and I knew that it was something special. So looking back at that and making sure that we were all there together, and that was really important. I never felt alone. I never felt like I was out there, sort of in the wind, if you will. I had an army behind me, and I say that all the time. I said it to the customer. It's not me. I've got a whole army behind me that's going to do this. So, so I wanted to bring that up, and I think it's a real testament to what you've been saying. And I know you brought it up at the beginning, but I wanted to double down on it because I lived that. I was there. So a lot of people may not know that. I was there for the first one through the billion, right? So it's very, very important.
You're a key part of it. No, you're not only there, you're a key part of it.
No, I had a blast, and I was fortunate, and I was blessed. I was blessed to have a team like you and others around me and behind me. So kudos for that. So when you tackle we just talked about it, one of these big transformational programs at a company level, how do you break it down? How do you manage all the steps? We talk about operational cadence and excellence, right? So how do you do all that? What's the key? What are the little lessons learned that we can all write down here that we can take and apply?
I think it's a great question as well, and I think that's very front of mind for me right now. I think the cadence and forecast and so forth are very straightforward and all that. But I think the one thing that's really, really tricky and challenging that we still struggle with is prioritization. Because there's so much that comes at sales, for instance. Everyone wants to enable the field on this or that, and they're all good things. Or there's a project to do this spreadsheet or that, and they're all very meaningful things. But we cannot afford, Rob, to let selling become a part-time job. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is be a little more clear with the field about the prioritization. When so much is coming at us, and how do we maximize selling time? And so what we're saying is, three main priorities. And when tasks come at you, or you're looking at your plan for the day, weigh the different options versus these three criteria and see what scores the highest. Customer engagement, taking care of customers, 1. Number 2, pipeline generation. And number 3, pipeline conversion, bookings. And the more that what's in front of you lines up with those goals, I think you can prioritize it at the top of your list and maximize your time and effectiveness. But I think it's very, very tricky. There's so much coming at people. There's not enough time, not enough selling time. And how do you, we're still trying to figure that out. And it's always a challenge, not just here, but other companies as well.
Yeah, sure. And again, I write this down. Sales is not a part-time job. Is that what you said?
We cannot afford to let sales become a part-time job. That's right.
I mean, it's not a part-time. I love that. I love that about you. I mean, here's what made you successful is you prioritize that every time. And what that meant to you, if I remember correctly, was the customer came first, and the fact that you were there for the customer. So we can pivot to that too, because here's what I'm seeing is that one statement is saying to the sales or go-to-market executive that whatever decision you make, have the customer's best interest in mind, and that you're going to build value for that customer, and that you're going to leave that customer better for having met you. Fair enough?
It's great. Well put. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's how you lived your life, and that's how I hope I lived mine. And so all of these things about pipeline conversion, forecasting, making sure you're doing all this. Also, how about learning the product, right? Learning the new products, learning all the nuances of the products, the competitive intelligence, you name it, the legal you could go on, right? The professional services team, all your, we call it ecosystem, I call it family, right? Your family around you, learning everything they do, customer success. But then you put on top of that, don't ever let sales be the part-time. It's a lot to handle for a go-to-market executive or a salesperson. And I think that it's really a mindset, wouldn't you say? It's a mindset issue, because those things are going to take priorities here and there. They're going to go up and down. But if your mindset is that you're always selling and always putting the customer first and making sure they're different for having met you, things are going to go a lot better, right?
I think so. Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because sometimes, people aren't talking to all their customers the way they should, checking in with them as frequently as they should. There's not a deal there. But you know what, Rob, someone in our company, very wise person, pointed out the other week, wait a minute, isn't talking to your customers also a great way to generate pipeline? So,
wouldn't you think?
Your customers, yeah. And talking about challenges and hardships, I mean, Rob, you've seen this too. When customers have problems, that's an opportunity for us to really provide value to them and differentiate ourselves from every other vendor out there that says all the right things till they get the order. As a rep, customers would ask me, well, when we do this big deal with you, will we ever see you again? Because we've heard so many reps come in and do big deals and disappear. It's like, you don't understand. You're going to see me 10 times as much because I'm going to do everything I can to make you successful and consume your subscription faster. It's a win for you. Accelerate your time to value. But you know what that means? You're going to buy more from me sooner. And it's easier for me to help you do that and get value than just to go cold call 1,000 people. So be careful what you wish for, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. You're going to be spending a lot more time with me because I'm going to be so committed to making you successful.